Hey everybody, this is Bryce Brooks, and I'm going to talk to you today about basically if ESPN is biased or not, and what we should think about them and the way that they do things. And so I'm going to kind of pose a couple of arguments people have against them, and talk about them, say what I think after doing a bit of research and investigation into things that they have done. And the first thing we're going to talk about is basically how people, or why people, um, project themselves as if they think they're biased or not. And basically, the medium that is used to do this is Twitter. And there's also blogs and things like that, but Twitter is the main one because they can reach not only ESPN, but the individual sort of commentators that they have on ESPN. And every once in a while, they'll actually get a response. Unlike if you were to post something on a blog or something, they're not likely to respond to that. Yeah, so Twitter has kind of become almost like you can think of it as the comment section on a video or a Facebook post, but it's almost like unsolicited comments. Like the a certain commentator like Kirk Herbstreit or Lee Corso or something like that could go on and do a show on ESPN, and then people will live tweet about it. And even though ESPN does kind of promote to tweet at them about certain things, a lot of times they obviously don't get the responses that they want, and people claim bias by this. And they claim bias mainly because, or the main topics that people say that they claim bias are for extreme positives or extreme negatives. For instance, the Yankees, the New York Yankees, are people claim that ESPN talks about the Yankees too much. They favor the Yankees. They treat them as like the sort of the face of baseball. And the fact is like yeah, they do that. They do talk about the Yankees. They talk about remember when Derek Jeter retired. It was a whole skeptical every game, every time he went like, oh, this will be the last time Jeter's at this stadium or this stadium. And yeah, they do kind of blow it out of proportion sometimes, but it's not without merit. Because things people have to understand is, according to this source here in Forbes magazine, the New York Yankees are the third most profitable franchise in the world, sports franchise that is, and they're behind two soccer teams, and only behind two soccer teams, which ESPN doesn't really cover soccer. It's kind of something I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, there's a huge following for the New York Yankees, and by ESPN talking about the Yankees, they get all those people, all those viewers' attention. Or if they were to talk about someone maybe with a less following, someone in the bottom of the league, I will use the Tampa Bay Rays as an example because it's kind of like where I'm from. The Rays are a very young team, and pretty much the only ones that follow that team are the people who live in Tampa or in that area. And so if they cover the Rays, well, they're not interesting a lot of people. And if they cover the Yankees, they interest a vast amount of people, both in and out of the United States. The Yankees is a worldwide, world recognized brand. And so it's in their best interest to attract the most people because at the end of the day, they are a company, and that's something I'm going to be talking about a lot, is that ESPN is a company, and that company needs to make money, and they want to make more and more money and expand and grow, just like any other company. And in order to do that, they have to reach out to a lot of different people. And the Yankees, just as an example, are a good way to do that because the Yankees already have a following and they can sort of not mooch off of it, but sort of build their progress off of other people's success because they live in a weird situation, or the business or the company is a weird situation where they're not actually the interesting part. They're talking about the interesting part and giving statistics and information about it. Whereas it's not like a TV show where everyone tunes into the TV show to watch that TV show. No one tunes into ESPN. It's like, oh, Kirk Herbstreit's on today. I'm gonna listen to him only. They listen to like, oh, they're talking about my team today. I'm gonna listen to what they say about my team. And yeah, so that's basically how they base everything off of, not just the Yankees, but the most financial brands in any sport, in pro football, in college football, in golf. I mean, they still follow Tiger Woods ex- way more than any other golfer, and Tiger Woods hasn't been on top of his game or top of any real bracket in a couple of years now. But they still follow him because people know his name, they know his story, his sort of brand, I guess you could say, and they're still interested in what he wants to do. And all of this kind of feeds into ESPN needs to feed into what the general public wants. And because because they need to talk about what the general public wants, it's going to be the teams that are winning. There's going to be the teams at the top, or sometimes, in some cases, it's the teams at the very bottom because that's the reason that they're interesting is because they're doing so bad, as harsh as it is to say. That is why they talk about those teams. But for a lot of the teams, like towards the bottom, but maybe not completely there, or middle of the road teams, they don't talk about as much because it just doesn't interest a lot of people. Because there's a lot of fans out there who go and say they bet on an NFL game. They don't really care about that team. They don't care about any particular team. They just care about the one they bet on. And so they need to talk. And games who are higher rated, two high ranked teams playing each other, will draw more attention, draw more money, draw more people interested in that game. And another thing that you kind of have to keep in mind when you go about Twitter and everything, or even, I don't know how active anyone is here on YouTube, but in the YouTube comments, someone is much more likely to say, I didn't like this, I hated it, than they are to go out of their way and comment and say, wow, this was really good, I like this was great. As harsh as that is to say, it's kind of a fact of life and it's true. People will take more action when they're disappointed or angry rather than when they're happy. And I mean, it may not be the greatest thing in the world, but it is the world we live in. And so sometimes these sort of negative actions or negative words towards ESPN just outweigh the good because the good aren't really representing themselves. Not that there's any fault for them, they really shouldn't have to, but it's just they're being overthrown by this negative conversation, I guess you could say, about why ESPN is bad, why ESPN didn't do this or did do that or whatever. They covered something wrong. And it's kind of have something that every viewer has to kind of understand and take with a grain of salt because you have to know that these people are not the majority. They're not, you know, they're not the main ones watching ESPN, and the fact that they are saying that it's bad and commenting on it means that they are watching ESPN, and they're just feeding the machine, I guess you could say, is that they're just giving them another view and giving them more money even though they don't like it. And a lot of people also, and this is especially true in college football, where you say you go to the school, you're sort of invested in that name or that brand. You're obviously a team fan, and you don't see ESPN talking about your team, or even worse, you see them talking highly about your rival. That is when people sort of tend to lose their way. They think that, oh, my teams, they live, basically, you live in a city where your team is the most important thing, is more important than any other team. People kind of get clouded by that because there's no one out there opposing you on a day-to-day basis. The only opposition you have is on, Saturdays when the football team plays. But people kind of get lost in that, and they see ESPN talking about other teams, not talking about their team, talking about rivals, putting them down like, oh, they're not going to make it out of this one, they're not going to get it. And people really don't like that, and they kind of lose it sometimes and go on and backlash at ESPN commentators, ESPN analysts, ESPN talk show hosts. I mean, just everyone, anyone who says something against their program, which is great and is not great. Because it's great that someone is passionate about a certain thing or certain brand, excuse me, but it's not great that they have to go and attack someone else for it. This person is just doing their job. They're saying their opinion in the way that they see it based on the data that they have. And be honest, they have more data than anyone who's not affiliated with ESPN. ESPN pays people just to track stats, just to follow patterns and everything.